More than 60 years have passed since director John Huston made his controversial World War II documentaries Battle of San Pietro and Let There Be Light. Realizing the importance of these films and wanting to present them to modern audiences in their best light, the Academy Film Archive teamed up with the Documentary Channel to create brand new archival film prints of these classics.
Before World War II, the films that made by the military were pretty poor quality. And so when World War II started, the government thought, well, who knows how to make films? Well, of course, Hollywood. So hundreds of Hollywood directors and actors and technicians were enlisted into the military to make films. Frank Capra was one of the most famous directors in Hollywood before World War II, and so he was responsible for several film crews that went all around the world to make these documentaries, these propaganda films. John Huston was very enthusiastic. He wanted to do his part for the war effort. So he joined the Signal Corps in 1942, and he became part of Frank Capra's film unit.
Huston was a very established screenwriter and had also then earned the right to start directing, had made the Maltese Falcon in 1941. But he had no documentary experience prior to his recruitment to work on the war effort on behalf of the U.S. Army.
Dad had wonderful taste, and anything that he touched where his taste could be demonstrated, I don't think it mattered to him whether it was documentary or feature film or his painting or whatever it was. Dad's life was the pursuit of doing things that were excellent.
Nowhere along the entire front were enemy preparations more elaborate than in the San Pietro area. For San Pietro stands at the threshold of Liri Valley.
It didn't seem to me that making a documentary was really any different than making any other film. I suppose it was a somewhat different approach in that the documentary I allowed the material to reveal itself, to tell its own story. I didn't have a story. Nothing was written beforehand.
A film that was made under very unique and unusual conditions. Huston had been assigned the job of recording the triumphal movement of the U.S. Army from the south to the north of Italy as part of the liberation of Italy. When he arrived on the scene, however, events did not match the scenario that had been given to him. And he eventually decided to settle into San Pietro, where a fortress community was being staunchly defended by the Germans. And for 1 week in December of 1943, battle raged there, in which estimates as high as 1,000 U.S. Army troops were killed.
And you just think, oh my God, you know, this footage that they captured, they were committed to getting it and committed to putting themselves on the line to get it because they knew the importance of what those images back in the cinemas at home would mean to mom and dad's seeing what was going on, and not only for the news value, but also to the patriotic fervor that some of this stuff created.
Certainly when you watch San Pietro, it seems to me that the sheer physical danger and physical hardship of making that film probably eclipsed his narrative concerns day to day. What blows my mind watching them is just imagining, you know, being out there, living with those guys, shooting 16mm film. And the sheer physical danger of where they were and what they were going through is pretty palpable in some of those scenes.
Many men gave their lives.
It broke some important ground in documentary filmmaking, and I really respect it for that reason.
Yes, I suppose San Pietro was probably the first personal account. It was personal in the sense that it was actually witnessed by the camera.
Now, of course, Huston, being John Huston, is not going to make your ordinary documentary.
Volunteer patrols made desperate attempts to reach enemy positions and reduce strong points. Not a single member of any such patrol ever came back alive.
He made San Pietro. He kind of took it on himself to make the kind of film he wanted to make, and he ran into trouble with Army brass.
Our initial assault on San Pietro had been repulsed with heavy casualties.
Huston filmed a lot of soldiers being put into body bags, lowered into coffins. That was probably a little bit too strong, and that was something that was probably not going to go very well with either the Army brass or the American public. There's some correspondence back and forth between Capra and Huston, several memos actually, from Army hierarchy asking for particular cuts to be made in San Pietro. And it seems as though, reading between the lines, that Huston either forgot or on purpose refused to make these cuts.
They declared that it was be unfit for Army personnel to see the film because it would be demoralizing for men about to go into, for men who were headed for combat.
There's a memo saying, General so-and-so saw the print again, and he was very angry that these cuts had not been made after we've requested several times. And at the bottom, there's a penciled message from Capra to Huston. And in previous memos, he had referred to him as John. He said, "John, could you please do this?" Signed, Frank. In this memo, he says, "Huston, let's have no more of this insubordination. Capra."
The time I got back to photographic division of the Single Corps, why, the disgrace had already been rumored. And I was regarded, I'm afraid, as something of a pariah.
The Army generals who saw the film considered it to be an anti-war film. And Huston had a very famous comment about that. He said, "Well, if I ever make a pro-war film, I want you to take me out and shoot me."
And then, by one of those fortunate accidents, General George C. Marshall saw the film. His reaction was exactly the opposite of everyone's else. Marshall said that they were the very men who should see such a film to prepare them for the experience of combat. Well, the atmosphere changed overnight. I was decorated, and I was made a major.
As the battle passed over and beyond San Pietro, westward, townspeople began to appear, coming out of their caves in the mountains, where they had stayed in hiding during the enemy occupation.
Documentary can be many things, and among the many things, not just informational or educational, but it can be poetry.
Children are able to forget quickly. Yesterday they wept. Today there are smiles and even laughter. Tomorrow it will be as though the bad things had never happened.
And I think particularly when we look at Battle of San Pietro, we can see the poetry of John Huston, a master of cinema.